Oh, yeah, I definitely messed it up. It did not do the countdown. I'm sorry, Carlos. We are straight into it. Hello, everyone. I am obviously not Carlos, but I'm taking over for Carlos. He's on vacation this week. Hope you're having a good time, buddy. But no one is here to listen to me. Everyone is here to listen to you, Adam. We've got Adam Pearce, who is the co-founder and CEO of Blend Commerce, joining us today on the live. And Adam, I'll let you introduce yourself in a second, but for everyone who is listening, who is going to listen to this, today we want to talk about prioritization. I personally believe prioritization is probably the most important thing in our line of work. So we're going to talk about your favorite framework to do this, but enough about that. I'm going to toss it over to you, Adam. Introduce yourself, and then let's talk prioritization.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, good to be here, and thank you very much for having me. And like I said, I am the co-founder of Blend Commerce, which is a CRO agency based in the UK. Everything that we do as an agency is based around getting customers to do three things, which is buy now, buy more, buy again, which is something we call buy trifecta. So that's kind of me in terms of who we are and what we do. I've been working around Shopify now for probably about 10, 11 years. And I also run some events as well, which are called Ecom Collab Club, which some people might also know me about. But as you said, Alex, like I love the industry that we work in, CRO. But there are definitely some things that really, and I'm going to curse a little bit, but piss me off about our industry and things that annoy me. And one of them is prioritization, which, as you said, we are definitely going to be getting into today.
Love it. So I know you have a specific framework that you want to talk about, but before we get into that framework, when I think prioritization, like there's a few things kind of stand out to me. Like when you're trying to prioritize the things you want to experiment, the things that you want to test, like where you're going to go next, I think like this is actually very important, but also very difficult. And I think the reason it becomes difficult is like the politics, the inter-team dependencies. Like I want to do this, but hey, another team maybe needs to give me approval to do that thing, or they might have a conflicting opinion on what that ends up looking like. So maybe before we go into that specific framework, like let's talk a bit about like how these ideas kind of like die on the vine before they ever even get implemented.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, when it comes to CRO, it usually the starting of that conversation usually will come from either, in my world, typically head of marketing or head of ecom. And the problem is that if we kind of think about this, is that when we are looking at an e-commerce business, there are so many hands in that pie that you're never going to get an agreement about the best way to go. And we've had it multiple times. I've had a conversation with the head of e-commerce. Everything looks great. We've got some brilliant ideas, some hypotheses of what we're going to do. And then it goes in front of the head of brand. The head of brand goes, no way. There is no way we're doing that to our PDP. Or there is no way that we are, going to display our subscriptions like that. Or actually operations would be involved. Say, from an operation point of view, it's very hard if we sell these products. So you get that situation where I think there's some negativity around CRO because it's change. And look, as humans, we're not very good with change. But ultimately for me, the problem is that it is, what is the single goal or metric that folks are trying to get to? Because my opinion is every damn person in an e-commerce brand is looking for a different thing. And if you've got that, how the hell do you make everyone happy? It's very difficult.
It's a really good point. Like everyone's in pursuit of something different. But I think what's really interesting is everyone has their own individual KPIs. Everyone has their own individual metrics that they want to move. But like, hey, if you ask enough whys to anyone on a D2C brand, on an e-com team, like what is the goal? Well, the goal is to grow. The goal is to grow the business. The goal is to make more money. The goal is to be like, have an operationally sound business where I can grow into the future. I can keep growing and I can survive to get to that next point in my growth. So like, even though everyone has those individual things that they're chasing, you ask enough whys, it's eventually going to be revenue or profitability, I think, in terms of like what people are prioritizing. So I think the politics ends up being like, yeah, I want this individual thing. I want this individual thing. But it's interesting to me because at the end of the day, it really comes down to, how do I grow the business? How do I get more revenue? How do I grow it profitably?
I mean, you mentioned there about revenue and profitability, and it's something that, you know, we've toyed with over the years about thinking of how, when we are talking to a client about helping them with their CRO, do we look at profitability numbers? And as much as we would love to, the tricky thing and the trickiest thing that we found is actually derivation of those costs. And we did a piece of work with a pretty big brand who are based in LA, where we were trying to look at the profitability of their subscriptions. It took them 12 weeks to get costings. 12 weeks. And you go, that's just crazy. So I agree with you. I think, look, you know, ultimately, yes, you get to that point, but I think we've had a situation before where we've gone and said, look, you know, our North Star metric that we report on is revenue per session. And you show that, look, you got 25, 30% growth. And then they tell you, but hang on a minute, conversion rate hasn't grown by the 15 percentage points that we want it to grow by. And you're like, well, okay, but the revenue is increasing. The profitability from the numbers you show is increasing. That there's this fascination, obsession with conversion. And like you and I were saying before we started obviously going live today, conversion is conversion optimization is a really bad word for bad description of what we actually do.
My favorite straw man argument is that, hey, you want to increase your conversions, drop your prices to zero. Your conversion's going to go through the roof. But
win.
Yeah, exactly. Win. It's a complex interplay. Like every single change is going to move some metrics up, some metrics down. And I think like the biggest thing is just knowing, when you go into that experiment, what were you actually trying to move? What was the hypothesis? And like, did that actually come together? So Adam, maybe this is like a good jumping off point for your prioritization framework. So like, hey, when we want to get buy-in, when we want to choose the right things to do, how do we actually go about doing that?
I mean, just to step back a little bit, I mean, look, if we think about 2026, the world we're in today, it is so damn easy to get ideas, recommendations. You might say hypotheses, but I would beg to differ, of things that you should do for CRO. Everyone has got an opinion on it. There are tools for it. There are, you know, business celebrities who have their own CRO platforms, all this kind of stuff that has happened. So getting ideas realistically is easy. The difficulty, though, is, like you said there, is where do those ideas come from? And the best practice that we keep seeing being talked about is best practice for the particular brands that's come from. So when it comes to then deciding how to do it, it's a little bit like, you know, if anyone has ever had an estate agent or a realtor come to their home and say, you could add £100,000 or $100,000 to the value of your home if you did this and this and this and this and that. Yeah. And a lot of the time you go, I mean, yeah, but which one's the best one to do? Well, you need to do all of them, really. And you're like, oh my God, like, I wish I never called this guy. So the method that we like to use a blend is called PECTI, which is proof, ease, cost, time, and impact. Because what this does is that it gives you an ability to stay objective when it comes to actually structuring the prioritization of the items that you want. And it is based on different elements of how successful that particular A/B test or experiment could actually be. Now, the beauty of this, for me, is that it kind of acts a little bit like, you know, or I act like, or my team act like, a little bit like a peacekeeper. Or if you've ever had mediation in a work situation, the guy comes and goes, guys, it's okay. Let's all breathe. Let's all talk. The facts are. That is what, for me, what PECTI does between head of brand, head of ecom, head of dev, CEO, founder, whatever it might be, where they're all going, no, this thing. Funny enough, a couple of weeks ago, I did actually have two co-founders, wife and husband. Wife walked out of the meeting. She didn't agree with what the husband said. Hilarious. And good morning to you, both of you watching. But I think probably what's worth me doing here, Alex, is should we share the screen so we can show the guys what PECTI actually is?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. Because it just kind of helps us to visualize. So as I said, proof, ease, cost, time, impact. Now, the proof part here and the ease and the cost and time and the impact, each of these can be used by anybody. It doesn't have to be something that, just we use. Anybody can use this model. What will be different is the data and the experience and where you're drawing from each of these things. But ultimately, if we think about the proof element here, what we're doing with each of these items is in order to allow us to understand where we need to go, we are scoring each of these out of 5. And what we then do at the end of it is that we roll these up into an index of 100. So effectively, every single hypothesis or experiment that you come up with, you get then a score out of 100. And the idea is then is that by doing that, you can then use that to structure which of these tests you're going to take first. So the proof bit for here, in terms of the way that we use this, is that, look, when we've tested, I think with about 300 odd different Shopify brands, we've got lots of proof that things work or don't work, and for different contexts. Now, in terms of this, if you're doing this by yourself, there would also be here in terms of proof for you. If you're running this alone, you can find examples where other brands have gone and done that particular thing. Yes, okay, it's not proof of that particular test, but if you can see that being used, that could be your version of proof. Ease here is more about the level of complexity and risk. And there's 2 parts there. The complexity part is, well, actually, how easy or straightforward is it going to be to build this thing from a technical point of view? And secondly, if we are going to be building something here and we are relying upon connections or we're relying upon third-party apps, what is the risk that is involved there? So this is kind of, the sensible guy, the ease guy of going, well, hang on a minute, is it going to be too difficult or not? There's always that friend that says, well, hang on a minute, should we really have another beer? That's the ease part. Now, the cost bit, the cost here, we say, what is the cost of the client? And there's 2 parts of this. First part is, if obviously we're building it, well, we're not a charity, guys. We are going to be charging you for that time to do that. But secondly, as well, the cost in terms of any third-party apps or the opportunity cost of implementing that test. And I think the opportunity cost part there is something that often will get missed out with sort of experimentation hypotheses, in the sense that if, let's say, for example, we are proposing a test that is going to place subscription purchases over single product purchases on a PDP, there is going to be an opportunity cost there of the potential sales of that single product. Is it worth the risk? Are we factoring that into what we're going to do? So again, all of this can be done by anybody. Time, pretty simple one. Is it going to take a long time or a short time to actually do it? And then the final one, impact, which is, what is the potential uplift? Now, the beauty, obviously, with you guys, Intelligems, is that you have lots of data, and obviously Intelligems users will know that when you use Intelligems, it will give you a extrapolation of what it expects to add in terms of a particular test over the course of a year. But if you are looking at this, and like you quite rightly said before, Alex, when you are doing a test, you need to have a hypothesis in mind of what you are believing this is going to do. And sticking to that within PECTI is very, very important. So if you look at this now, in this particular scenario, if you are faced with those 5 faces around that boardroom, where's a head of brand, marketing director, CEO, founder, and you go, guys, this is what we're going to do. Here is the PECTI score. Here is the rationale for proof, ease, cost, time, and impact. Well, I've seen it before. The room goes silent and they go, well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty structured the way you've put this across. And actually, you know what? If we do it this way, we've got stuff to fall back on to either prove or disprove whether what we thought was going to happen, rather than, I hate the phrase on a meeting where someone goes, I've got this gut feeling that our bundles just aren't working. And you're like, wow. So you're basing your physiology on whether or not you think that your e-commerce store is going to perform or not. That is what you are basing it on. Right. Okay, great. Scrap your gut, do something that is structured. And for me, it doesn't have to be PECTI. What it means is, for me, is there needs to be something that is there that A, is structured, but B, is accountable to reflect on and then to learn from. So thank you for my TED talk, Alex, and good night. Cheers. So yeah, that's basically for me, prioritization, the kickoff point with PECTI.
So I I like this, and I like that you included the opportunity cost inside of cost. Like opportunity cost can come in so many different flavors in e-commerce, and
Mm,
like it can even come at the expense of like your ability to test under other things. Because I think like there are tests that you can run concurrently. Like they're not going to interfere with one another, but like one opportunity cost can also be, I'm going to experiment with this thing, but because that impacts like all these areas of the business, it is actually impacting my ability to test in these areas with something else. So like I love that you're including opportunity cost inside of there. And with this, like, do you ever get those five people in the room? Like, whose responsibility is it to set PECTI going into there? Because I can
mm,
imagine a nightmare scenario where you walk into a room and there's six people and it's like, oh, all right, guys, we're all going to set this together. And then all of a sudden this meeting becomes a 7-day trial of everyone disagreeing
sure.
on the different amounts here.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there's a couple of ways to do it. I mean, obviously, it's from my point of view, it's a lot more straightforward when a objective third party is involved, because ultimately, as an agency, we can come in and say, right, guys, we've got the experience, we've done this with the brands. Here is the PECTI scoring that we've got. The second best scenario that I think is that when you have this scenario, is that yes, okay, information is gathered by the e-commerce manager, e-commerce director, or someone in the e-commerce team, but they are the one who then goes to score this. The difficult bit, and I think the worst way of doing PECTI, is when you have a member from each of the teams together, because ultimately what happens then is that the level and actually the scoring out of 5 becomes very, very warped. And that's a difficult thing when you've got lots of people involved in this. It then becomes something that actually doesn't prevent what we're trying to do, which is to increase the speed of experimentation, increase the speed to which we get to the revenue and profitability goals of the business. So to try and answer the question, I think, a single person or a single entity in terms of an agency or a consultant is usually, in my opinion, the best way to set a PECTI. The other thing with PECTI as well, though, is remember that this is not a static process. This is dynamic. So what the hell do I mean by that? What I mean by it is that the data that comes from a set of tests feeds back into PECTI each time you've done a sprint, whether that's monthly, quarterly, whatever it might be. So actually what you'll see is that your PECTI should actually be rescored every month or every 3 months, depending on the data that you've just got. So for example, if we can see the conversion rate actually was one of the levers that we were trying to pull to increase revenue per session is actually on the up, but AOV is taking a bit of a dip, we then need to switch lanes and go actually from a PECTI perspective, there is more weight now towards AOV. So therefore, some of these items and the rationale that we had is going to flip. Because you and I both know, Alex, agencies are brilliant at creating spreadsheets. We are fantastic at creating spreadsheets. But the problem is making them dynamic where you go back to it and change them, not so hard. And that's where you avoid, I think, with kind of using an iterative process like this to stop that happening.
Yeah, I like that because one thing I see a lot of people kind of get caught up in that rescoring this and re-going back helps with is I build a set of ideas, I put a roadmap together, I prioritize my roadmap, and then I start picking these things off. And as I go along, I'm starting to move to the lower score items. But if I didn't come back and reprioritize, then like I'm doing all of this in a snapshot in time, maybe a month ago, maybe 3 months ago, when I actually tried to put like a full roadmap together. And I'm probably not prioritizing the right things anymore. And I think like something that ends up happening quite a bit too is like you test something, you get the learnings from this, but then if you don't go back and revalidate and like think about that again in 3 months, 6 months, a year, like how long does something stay impactful and effective for? Well, I mean, in CRO, the favorite answer, it depends. But like I would argue that like you're never going to have a winner that takes you for a year, for 2 years. Like it's always on a timeline. And if you keep on reprioritizing this, then you're going to make sure that your roadmap stays dynamic. And I think like a lot of these prioritization frameworks as well, they can quickly fall victim to like the ease component. And it's like, I constantly just pick off the quick wins and like, cool, that keeps you busy. You'll keep having wins. But like that impact piece, there are some like really impactful experiments that you can run on your site that are going to take more time, that are going to take more conviction, but they always get deprioritized.
Yeah. I mean, again and again and again, you know, and it's like typically when we kick off, you know, with a brand and we're helping them as CRO, as part of the onboarding, we will ask them, okay, look, give us, you know, what we effectively call, I'm going to curse here, shit list, so my apologies, of stuff that has just been sat there for either weeks or months. And, you know, there are ideas and thoughts that have been sat there for so long that actually the validity of that from a commercial point of view is no longer there, because actually the economics of doing it have changed so much. And I think that you're absolutely right. That's the danger. If you don't assess these things and then also just purely go on the thing that, you know, again, that we love in this industry, the low hanging fruit, you get the sort of the short, sharp shock. But like you say, it's never going to materialize in something. So I remember a few months ago, I had a call with a brand, and I think it was an Australian brand. And it was funny because the guy emailed me a couple of days later because of the time zone and said, the thing is, Adam, is like, surely if you tested all these websites, surely you know what the perfect website looks like and you can just build that for us. And I think, you know, that's still a perception, isn't it? Is that's what CRO should be about, is that, you know, we know what the perfect website is and away we go from there. If I knew what the perfect website would look like, I would probably not be doing this webinar right now, and I'd probably be in the Bahamas wearing a gold chain and smoking a big fat Cuban cigar, but I'm not. I think, you know, the thing is, it's like we have to remember, like you say there, that those things that will give you, you know, a win for a while are going to change because your audience changes. Even if your audience doesn't change, their behaviors will change. The economics of the world will change. You know, so much is developing that you're never going to, when are you going to complete CRO? I'm sorry. The level infinity is a thing. It ain't Super Mario. You know, it's a different ball game.
This is one of the reasons, like I hate referring to the work as CRO. And I know like you and I have talked about this before, is I've started to call it growth experimentation, because like when you refer to it as like growth experimentation versus CRO, like growth experimentation doesn't feel like something that is like, I do it and it's done. Like when you say conversion rate like, is my site CRO? Is it conversion rate optimized? I'm done. It can't be project based like that. It has to be continuous. And like you were saying, hey, what's the perfect website look like? Like something I love saying here at Intelligems is like, there are no silver bullets. Like the best practices might be best practices for 75% of the brands out there. But what if you're in the 25%? Like, what if it doesn't work for you? Like, you have to operate in the realities of your business. And like you were saying, like those realities are going to change over time. Like not only does things change about your business, the market changes. Like all of a sudden there's tariff implications across the world. And like, that's impacting everything. Hey, I introduced a very novel product and I'm rinsing. And then all of a sudden everyone figures out I'm printing money hand over fist. And now I've got 6 competitors. And now like what I had to show on my site and what I had to talk about before is completely different, because now it's not, oh, I need to convince you want this. It's, well, now people are evaluating me across 6 different options. And if everything I implemented when I had no competitors stays for a year, I'm going to start losing. Like it can't be a project. It has to be cyclical. You always have to be learning. You always need to be finding something new and then applying it, and also revalidating what you thought to be true in the past. Is it still true?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing, you know, if we kind of boil it down, you know, and think of ourselves, you know, not as e-commerce professionals or SEO experts or whoever who, you know, is watching today, is just a member of the public. We see it with product marketing all the time. You know, if you think about the kind of the prime drink with Logan Paul and KSI, you know, it started off with massive fanfare. You know, in the UK, people were reselling it for like £20 a bottle, which is crazy. You know, and within a space of about 12 weeks, it was in kind of the bargain basement. It was, you know, selling at like less than £1 a bottle. we see it all the time. The tactics that you then use to shift that product are different. And it's, none the same with the website and the behaviors around that. So, I don't know why we get surprised that we can't ever get the perfect website, when we see it all the time that products will have a life cycle. They will go up and down that life cycle. Yes, you can revive things, but it depends on what's going on in the world and how other products or services are being sold.
Yeah, and like when I was saying growth experimentation, like the reason I love that word growth is because, hey, I might have figured out a bunch of things that kind of work for this core audience, but like, hey, if I want to grow, if I want to expand, if I want to keep going, I'm going to have to go into audiences that aren't my core. I'm going to have to go into channels that I don't have the same level of expertise in. And like, that's where this growth experimentation mindset and like testing and experimentation comes in so handy is, okay, well, I'm going to go scope this experiment to a particular channel. I'm going to go scope this experiment to a particular product line, to a particular type of customer, people coming in through email, so that I can actually learn in these kind of like isolated pockets so that I can kind of keep on expanding and growing out from that core. Because like, even if the dynamics of my business aren't changing and the market isn't changing, as I march towards my growth goals, everything about my business is going to change in every single step I make out of that core. And
Totally.
like, that's the value of experimentation, is validating everything that's going on now, but also experimenting into the future so that you can gain more clarity, gain more confidence about where you want to go. When you were talking about like the gut ideas, it's like, I'm maybe a little bit of a weirdo in the CRO space. Like I kind of subscribe to like the gut feel, because like, I think at the end of the day, everyone's gut feel is based on something. Like no one just wakes up and goes, we need more subscriptions, or we need to introduce a bundling thing. Like it's usually based in some form of reality. But like, if you have these ideas, don't just do them. Don't just make that change and be like, okay, let's see what happens. Is like, have a little bit more rigor to it. Put the experimentation methodology to it so that you can actually know if it was worth it and it worked. Otherwise, it's like, did it work? I don't know. I turned it on and it seems to be working, but it also was the 4th of July and we sell ice cream and it's going crazy.
I think the thing for me is like, and I agree with you. I think experimentation is a much better word, but I think the reason that people shy away from calling it that, and some companies have, like failure and experimentation teams, which I think is absolutely brilliant. But the problem with that is when you use the word experiment or experimentation, that indicates that there is a room for failure. And, like we know, with most A/B tests, in terms of, if you look at A/B testing, about sort of, somewhere between 10 and 40% of them will win, which means there's a big room for failure. You have to accept that is going to be something. And I always find it ironic in business, is that, and I think in honesty, the world of paid ads and drop shipping has given us this mentality, is that when you go onto LinkedIn, the expectation is that, you put $1,000 in, and you get $5,000 out, and business is easy, and yada, 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 yada. Again, we all know this isn't the case, but we get sucked into this idea that everything that we do in business, there is going to be input in, input out, and there is going to be an ROI or an impulsive impact on that. No. And it's not the case for any form of marketing. There is never going to be that perfect linear return on what you do. You have to be prepared for the fact there is going to be some element of failure or not a clear, return X by X date that's going to come through. And that's hard. And I get that, because look, I own a business as well. And look, when I'm trying to grow my business, that's what I'm thinking about. But I think this is definitely why sometimes, if people are thinking about conversion optimization and have maybe come from working with, let's say, a design dev agency on a project basis where they've done redesigns, it is a whole different mentality when you get to CRO. And you have to be ready, I think, mentally to do that, because the way of working and the expectation and the deliverables off the back of it are very, very different.
Where do you think that intolerance for failure came from? Is it from the golden days of D2C, where it was like there was a ton of arbitrage opportunity in meta ads and like it actually felt easier? Or like, why do you think people are scared to fail? Or is it a fear, or is it just like, where does that kind of like fear, uncertainty, doubt come from?
Well, I think, yeah. Look, the heyday of ads, yeah, Meta ads, when it was, you sort of 20, 30 ROAS, and it was like any dumb schmuck, including me, could run Facebook ads and get 20 to 30 ROAS. It was like, oh, I'm a genius. No, you're not. It was just like, it was an underutilized channel. It was pretty easy to set up, and a lot of good people and not so good people made some good money for it. I think the thing that accompanies that, though, is that we also had that phase of drop shipping where drop shipping was very popular. There were a lot of people creating courses about how easy it was. And then on top of that as well, you have platforms like Shopify who make it super easy to set up an e-commerce business. In fact, now within minutes, you can have one going. And that is only increasing in terms of the speed. Now we have AI and all this other good stuff that is there. So I think the problem becomes and this is also the danger, I think, at the moment with everything that is happening with AI. I know I said I was going to talk about Alex, but shit, I've done it now. The problem is that the expectation of speed is only actually getting worse. And the thought that you can turn off your brain and let a model do it all for you is also coming in as well. And that, again, is completely in contradiction to what experimentation is all about, because it is about thinking, it is about critically analyzing what you need to do, rather than going input in, input out, where's the result, off we go. So yeah, we've got some rocky times ahead in terms of discussions about this, I think.
Yeah, I think like something you said there is like there is the theory of something and the practice of something. And Adam, our co-founder, and myself, we just recorded a podcast on something similar that's going to air soon, where it was basically like, do I want to have full control, or do I want like a black box algorithm to do it for me? And like on the surface, you ask someone like, do you want to do the work or do you not want to do the work? Like, obviously I'm going to say I don't want to do the work. Like I want it to be automated. So like in theory, this sounds really good. And then when everything starts to get like too automated, it's like, whoa, it's doing something that like I don't necessarily agree with, or I think I want to try or experiment or test something over here. So like it's actually in the nuance in the middle. It's like I don't want to go to a world where I have to build a 16-page document of if this then that statements on how I want my business to run. But I also don't want to relinquish all of that control and just say like, hey, do it for me. And like, to bring this back to like the fear around losing is like, oh, I think like in the past CRO was, oh, you're a button color change away from changing your business, or you're a headline away from changing your business. And I think it was kind of like the same arbitrage opportunity, just in a different package from paid ads. Actually, it was like there's certain UX elements that people hadn't really discovered yet. And like if you were the first to it, then you could actually have a boom. And I don't think that's really the thing anymore. It's more, hey, I need to operate in the realities of my business. I need to ask questions, run experiments to get those answers, and not treat it as like, oh, there was a win or a fail. It's like I asked a question and did I get the answer? And like, the reality in our line of work is like, I ask a question, I run the experiment, and did I get an answer? I actually didn't. I just got 16 more questions that came out of that initial question. Like, here we go. We keep on pushing on. So yeah, I agree. People are scared of failure. And you see it a lot. Like we see it at Intelligems, we see it everywhere. Is like, okay, well, how do I get more wins? And like, I'm going to evaluate this on like, how many winning outcomes do I create? Is that the be all end all, or is it everything we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, where it's like, I want to grow my business. I want more revenue. I want these outcomes. I don't want wins. And to bring it back to this guy, don't just like go pick off the quick wins. Don't try to manufacture a win. Put some bets on the table that could actually change the business. Not, I got a winner because I got a 2% conversion bump on this particular funnel from this particular paid ad.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's also going on this point about, picking off the quick wins and the easy stuff. I have this a few times where when I talk to a business, and I'm effectively evaluating them if we can help them or not. What I'm looking for effectively are a couple of things. One is that they've got 50,000 visits a month, because we want to get statistical significance if we're going to be doing A/B testing. And the other element is that, okay, in terms of where they are now as a business from a financial point of view, is this a business that is in some sort of financial jeopardy, or is looking at CRO as an opportunity to get them out of some kind of hole that they're in? And I have to have some quite frank conversations sometimes, because say, look, if you are coming at that angle, you're not in the right headspace to do CRO, because for me, CRO is when things are okay, they're all right, they're ticking along. Whatever phrase you want to use from wherever you are in the world. And it's about saying, could we push this a little bit more? If you're coming from a perspective of, oh, man, I don't know if we're going to make it through the next 3 to 6 months, that is going to force you and going to mean the decisions that you make will not be structured. And it will be, this thing is easy. Yes, there is some proof that it can work. Do all that stuff now. Yes, we get a little uptick, but the stuff that's really endemic about this site that is really giving us an issue that might take us, a month to implement, we're going to ignore. So you're just, you're effectively pushing out that, this hard decision you need to make by a couple of months. And in the meantime, you paid an agency to sort of, help you get to that failure point quicker. So I know that sounds a bit pessimistic on my side, but I do think it should be a word of warning that for me, CRO and experimentation is not your Hail Mary if you think things are going south. It is a boosting a relatively stable scenario that you find you're in. And I'm sure some people will disagree with that, but look, that is, from my experience, that's what I feel.
What do you think of? I don't know if I disagree or agree. I think I'm somewhere in the middle on that, where it's like, do I believe that CRO will save a failing business? Probably not. Like optimizations across the site is not going to save a failing business. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on, like, what if one of the things that is kind of like a failure state for the business is like, oh, we need to get AOV to a certain level to maintain profitability in a paid channel. And can we use experimentation and CRO to find a way to get to that AOV level? So like, from your opinion, can people come into this with like, I believe the limiting factor of my business is X, and I want to start experimenting and testing to find if I can get that, yes or no. So maybe I'm not saying like, oh, I'm default dead in 2 months and like, yo, Adam, come save my business. But like, hey, I'm kind of ticking along, but it would be a game changer if my AOV was 15% higher. It would be a game changer if I had a 10% higher subscription rate. It would be a game changer if I could charge 10% more on like certain catalogs. Like, is that an okay approach, or does that kind of go against what you were saying?
No, that's exactly what I mean, because I think from my point of view, the way I look at it is revenue per session sits at the top, and then below that, then we have the 3 levers of buy now, buy more, buy again. So i.e. conversion rate, AOV, repeat purchase rate. I think the thing in what you're talking about there, absolutely, is that if we're identifying there's one of those levers that needs to be pulled and is holding us back, absolutely, that is a great scenario to do CRM, because you've got the focus, that's, if it is a conversion rate lever that you're going to pull, what the impact on revenue is going to be, or revenue per session in this case, and then you can go from there. So it's like, at the moment, we just started working with a Danish brand. And the Danish brand that we're working with, they did a redesign. And basically, after the redesign, their conversion rate dipped by about 40%. So they know that, the conversion rate is possible, or was possible previously. They've seen this decline since they did the redesign. And now the levers are to say, well, actually, AOV is about the same. And also repeat purchase rate has increased, but because the conversion has dipped, therefore the revenue has also dipped. So can we go back to that? Absolutely. And I think, that then sets the tone for when you're looking at PECTI about what actually gets, what it doesn't. I think it's more the case of, if you're saying, well, actually, look, sessions are down, conversions down, AOV's down, repeat purchase rate is down, cash flow is poor. That's when I think, I think it can be possible that it can help, but it's more for me is that the mentality of you saying to someone, to an agency, go and experiment with my site and I'm going to pay you to experiment. That is where it's going to be quite difficult to maintain a level head, and rather than just go and get stuff done, go and fix this thing, which is, you know, sometimes what the perception is that it's going to be like.
Yeah, and I think like what you said there with like, hey, just go experiment for me, it lends itself to, and like I'm not saying for your agency or like agencies in general, but like, hey, I'm just gonna go throw shit at the wall. And I'm gonna like, I'm gonna try to figure something out. I personally have never seen that be a successful endeavor. It's exactly what we were talking about before, where it's, hey, I believe one of my limiting factors is here, or I believe like the big opportunity lies in this area of the business. Let's ask some really good questions. Let's go validate some of these questions. Let's get some clarity and confidence on these things so that we could potentially change the business. Not, oh, I don't know where I'm going, so I'm going to start experimenting with a bunch of stuff and like try to find winners. Because even with the trying to find winners, and I'm sure you see this, is like you find a win and then you do another experiment, which is a win, but actually is now coming at the cost of the first win. So like you have all these wins, but you're really just spinning around in your chair looking at something different, but never actually left the spot.
Yeah, no, it completely and utterly, for me, that is it. Because I think you need that level of stability to be able to make a call on it. And if you haven't got that, you're just going to make bad decisions, which just means that it's going to continue to spiral and spiral and spiral. So yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think end of the day, like no matter what we want to call it, what we're after is decision quality and decision confidence. What you decide to do, what you decide to change is going to be specific to your business. But like, that's what this is ultimately about. We put the rigor behind it to know this is a good idea. This is a good decision. And I can empirically prove it. Look here.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it. All right, Adam, prioritization, PECTI. It's not project. It's ongoing. Focus on the things that matter to your business. There are no silver bullets. Anything else you want to add for the listeners today before we sign off?
I think, look, it's been great to chat to you, Alex. And I think, you know, my lasting message is that whatever you are doing with CRO or experimentation is to have a traceable, trackable process. It doesn't need to be PECTI, but there just needs to be something there that is beyond, I think we should test this thing, and then going ahead and implement it. So I think, you know, just bear that in mind, and, you know, use the resources that are around you, have the structure, and that will see you into a much better future when it comes to CRO.
Love it. All right. Before we end this though, Adam, anything you want to plug? Where can people find more of you? People listening, they're loving what you're saying. Where can they go get more of you? Where should they go get more information?
Yeah, sure thing. So what I would recommend is that if you are an e-commerce brand listening to this, if you go to the Blend Commerce website and go to the CRO benchmarks, which is just in the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll be able to get what we call our buy trifecta score, which is buy now, buy more, buy again. And on here, it will give you a benchmark of where your core metrics are in comparison to your industry, as well as giving you some A/B test ideas that you can go and test. Obviously with the platform of our choice, which of course is Intelligems.
Love it. We love the plug. All right, Adam, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everyone for listening. And when this makes its way to YouTube, we will get everything that Adam talked about into the show notes. So if you're listening to this after the fact, just head to the show notes and hit those links.